This is the Swatch MoonSwatch 1965, one of the MoonSwatch models created by Swatch as a tribute to the first watch worn on the Moon, the legendary Omega Speedmaster. But is this just another MoonSwatch with a different name and a different colour scheme? Not at all. In fact, this particular model is unlike any other MoonSwatch, unlike any other Swatch chronograph, and arguably unlike any chronograph ever made, quartz or mechanical. Let's take a closer look. At first glance, nothing seems especially unusual. A white dial, a grey case, 3 sub-dials, and a central chronograph seconds hand. It could easily be mistaken for a fairly plain, classic chronograph. But look more carefully at the sub-dials. At 10 o'clock, instead of the usual 60, we see the number 19, and at 2 o'clock, instead of the usual 10, we see 65. Read together, they form 1965, the year this watch pays tribute to. But here's the important part. This is not just a graphic detail. These numbers are not printed on the dial simply for decoration. They represent what the chronograph is actually measuring. Inside this watch is a chronograph that behaves in a completely unconventional way. The sub-dial at 2 o'clock does not measure tenths of a second, as you would normally expect. Instead, it measures minutes. And it takes a full 65 minutes to complete one full revolution. The sub-dial at 10 o'clock does not measure minutes. It measures hours, and not the usual 12-hour cycle. This hand takes 19 hours to complete one full revolution. So this chronograph counts 65 minutes and 19 hours. That alone makes this watch genuinely extraordinary. The chronograph function was specially adapted for this watch, both in the electronic circuit's control and in the counter-gearing, to produce the 19-hour and 65-minute registers. There is no other chronograph, mechanical or quartz, that reads time in this way. And that's why, in my opinion, this is the most interesting MoonSwatch ever produced. Not because it looks radically different, but because it dares to be different conceptually and mechanically. Swatch officially describes this model as a non-limited chronograph, housed in a grey bioceramic case with matching crown and pushers, paired with a grey Velcro strap. The bezel is black bioceramic with a white tachymeter scale, and the dial is clean, white, and highly legible. Turn the watch over and you'll find an image of the moon on the battery cover. Another signature detail shared across the MoonSwatch collection. The watch carries the Omega Times Swatch branding, the Speedmaster logo, and the MoonSwatch logo, along with the box-shaped bio-sourced crystal and the etched S at its center. Dimension-wise, the case measures 42 mm with a thickness of 13.25 mm and a lug-to-lug distance of 47.3 mm. Water resistance is rated at 3 bar. Now, a brief technical note. This watch uses the ETA G10 PowerDrive quartz chronograph architecture. PowerDrive allows for extremely fast and precise hand movement during the reset function, ensuring accurate positioning and a very dynamic chronograph action. However, the uniqueness of this model does not come from reset speed. It comes from the chronograph's specific logic and gearing, which were configured to support this unconventional way of measuring time. So yes, while the base architecture is quartz, the chronograph behaviour itself is unique to this model. And that's what makes this watch special. Not just visually different, not just historically inspired, but mechanically and conceptually one of a kind. A watch that doesn't just tell time, but tells a story that begins in 1965, when the Speedmaster earned its place in space history.
This is Gemini Control. We are now 8 hours and 34 minutes into the mission. At this time, the spacecraft is over the Indian Ocean, and we are into a quiet period of the flight. Pilot Ed White is sleeping. Spacecraft Commander Jim McDivitt is guiding the spacecraft and communicating with the ground at long intervals in between. To sum up our situation, the Gemini 4 spacecraft has been given a go for 18 revolutions. McDivitt has reported that he and Ed White are in a go condition. The oxygen and fuel supply are in good quantities aboard the spacecraft, and at this point in the flight, everything is go. This is Gemini Control.